Good morning. This is Jason D coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic Bonanza. It is Saturday at about 9:52. Pretty overcast day again. It's supposed to be pretty rainy this weekend. Originally, the forecast was going to be straight up rain for Saturday and Sunday. Now they're saying it's going to be maybe like passing showers, but we'll see how things go. The weather has been pretty crazy. The last few days have been gorgeous. Ever since Wednesday, it's now Saturday, but the last 3 days have been super awesome weather-wise. But we'll see. There's two few shows I have this weekend. Two that I have today. I know it's rain or shine. I guess they have it's a big benefit show that I'm going to be doing with Electric Bonfire, and also another really awesome local Maine musician, Troy Youngblood. I'm going to be playing with both bands tonight for a big fundraiser. So it's at Lake St. George Brewing, which is such an amazing place in Lake St. George. So very much looking forward to that. Hopefully the weather cooperates, but I guess from what I heard, it's gonna be outside, so they're gonna be building or putting up some giant tarps, from what I've heard, to still have the event. They're still saying it's gonna be rain or shine, so we'll see. Hopefully it's not too soggy and doable. But yeah, looking forward to it. And then tomorrow, Sunday, we're supposed to have another Quantum show at the Camden Library. There, at that location, unfortunately, there's not coverage with like tarps or any alternative, which would be really awesome if that was provided. But there's a little bit of coverage from the trees. There's a lot of woods right by there where the amphitheater is, but it's you kind of have to fend for yourself. And so we're gonna have to play it by ear tomorrow as far as what we're gonna do weather-wise. It's supposed to be pretty mixed, passing showers and stuff. So, but one cool thing is not only the gig that we usually do at the amphitheater in Camden is one of my favorite gigs. It might actually be my favorite gig that I look forward to as far as gigs that we do as Quantum, just because of the location and the acoustics are just really fun. Just it's a terrific natural sounding area. It's right by the ocean. But one good thing is if we have to cancel, which it's looking really really iffy, but if we have to cancel, we can at least make up the date, which is really nice. So we can do it at a later date, or at a later period in the summer, and it will be on a Sunday if we have to do that. So stay tuned for that. But we'll make the call in the morning to see how things are and stuff. But yeah, so always want to thank the new folks that come along, come on board here at the Film Fanatic YouTube channel page. Got some new subscribers, and there's been quite a few people commenting on the videos lately, and that is just an awesome thing. I love interacting with other fellow film fanatics. A couple of folks have been making recommendations for a few films. Some I've seen, some I haven't seen. But that's just awesome. And I'm always blown away by some folks who comment on some of the movies that are definitely on the more obscure side. And I'm just like, wow, like that's awesome that there's people out there that are aware of these movies, and or they are interested in these movies. And these are like pretty obscure movies. So very, very cool. That kind of actually warms my heart when that happens. So today's show is on a very special movie. I had such an amazing when I saw this movie in the theater, and I have talked about the experience or certain experiences that I've had that have been just amazing. Certain films that I have seen in the theater and also at particular theaters and also particular movies where it has been just uh, an amazing experience. You know, the reason as to why, or the kind of definition as to why I love movies so much, and it's all about, for me, it's all about the total immersion of the senses. I feel like it's sight and sound, heart and mind in unison, and you are transported to an entirely different, new and exciting kind of alternate universe. To me, that is the ultimate experience, and that's why I kind of feel like filmmaking is the greatest art form that there is. I think it's the most important art form, but I think it's all around the most powerful art experience that a person can have. You know, with music, obviously in the arts, you have, there's many, many different forms of artistic expression. You know, you have poetry, you have writers who specialize in fiction or nonfiction. You have people who are dancers and do, maybe traditional, say, African uh, dance, or very modern dance, and then you have theater performance, plays, whether it's more conventional theater or, say, very avant-garde theater. And then with music also, which, is kind of my thing of where I probably spend the most time. I spend the most time in that universe. And, everybody has that moment of where, they might be driving in a car, or they might be at a party, or wherever it could be, and they might hear that song that takes them to a certain place, whether it's like takes them to a nostalgic place, or it brings back memories of, say, your first love, or, a really bad breakup that you went through, or some big life transition, or some monumental event, for good or bad. Or it makes you think of, you might be, say, not in a really good mood, and you might hear a song and suddenly you feel like you're transported to, to this party on a beach, in this like tropical environment. All kinds of things like that. The power of music, where it's a direct and it's a primal experience. But as far as senses go, it's an auditory experience, and it strikes a chord, I think, in your heart first and foremost. But with film, I think it's unique and very different because it encapsulates all of the senses all at once, visually, emotionally, you know, and where everything is, everything, say, from maybe your current mundane kind of existence or your situation, when you have that magical event, you're truly transported to another place and time. And for me, it's completely, with a film, it's it's completely immersive because visually you're seeing things. You're you're taken away through the cinematography of that particular movie, the way it's shot, the way it's directed, the performances from the actors, the world building, if it's say some wild science fiction film, or I just did a show on Children of Men, which is one of my favorite kind of dystopian science fiction movies and books ever, where you get transported to a completely alternate futuristic universe. And as well as the music that is used to score the films. But to me, it's a total and complete immersion of the senses. Whereas, like music, obviously, and the rest of the arts, it's a it's a I look at it almost like as a heart trigger. It's a it's that stimulus or that stimuli that your heart or your mind react to right away, and that's incredibly powerful. But with film, it's all of the senses all at once. And there's been certain films I've mentioned before, like certain films, certain experiences that I've had where I've gone to the theater where it has been just an incredible experience. I kind of look at it as a really some experiences that I've had. It almost feels like a religious experience where it's totally transformative in the way that it just transports you. And I've talked about some experiences of certain movies that I've gotten to see in the theater that have been examples of that. I remember going to see Apocalypse Now, the Redux, probably about 10 years ago or so. Francis Ford Coppola re-released Apocalypse Now, an extended director's cut. He released it in the theater for like a limited run, and I had always loved that movie. That's always been one of my favorite movies, and Coppola has always been one of my favorite directors. I did a show on Apocalypse Now a while back, and when I got to see it, the re-release of that film in the theater, and before that period, I had seen Apocalypse Now many, many, many times, the regular theatrical cut. So when he released the Redux, which has like about an hour, 45 minutes of newer footage, particularly around the French plantation sequence, I got to see it in the theater at the Colonial Theater in Belfast, and it was the original film stock. Now, unfortunately, we don't have access to that kind of technology anymore. But I got to see it in the theater in its original form with on film the extended cut, and I was blown away by how powerful that movie was. It literally was like seeing that film for the first time, and it was an incredible, incredible experience. An experience I'll always remember. Other films that I've seen in the theater where I was just completely blown away by, and movies that I, up until that point, had seen many times. I got a chance also about 10 years ago. It was almost around the same period that I saw Apocalypse Now, a few years after that. But I got to see, they had it at the Strand in Rockland, and I got to see the theatrical run. There was a limited release of where they released it, John Carpenter's Halloween. And they showed it in October, and they had a special screening of it at the Strand in Rockland, which is a beautiful theater as well. And they had the original print, the original film, and it was amazing. It was like, again, it was a movie I had seen a bazillion times before, but literally seeing it on the big screen, with its in the original print, was like seeing it for the first time. It was just completely powerful, and I was just completely blown away by it. I also saw, which was a little bit more recently, more in the recent side of things, probably about 5 years ago. I got to see also at the Strand. I got to see Orson Welles' Touch of Evil, and that was also film, and that was like another, yet again, another completely transformative, mind blowing experience. And at the end of the day, when I have those experiences, I'm always like, this is why I love film so much, because it's that primal thing of like sitting in a dark room, with a bunch of strangers or sitting in a room with a group of friends, and the lights go out. And you're in this dark room, and it's just a complete feast for the senses. And it's such a primal, ritualistic experience. And so, other experiences that I had was, in terms of those kinds of things, were when Peter Jackson first released the first three Lord of the Rings movies. I had that experience too. I mean, it was an amazing time. It was a very magical period. There were three movies that came out, and they were, 3 years in a row. Each Christmas they came out, and I got to see them in the theater when they came out. Each I think each of those movies I saw opening night, and I got to see them at some really beautiful theaters, and it was just incredible, just amazing, just incredible. Um, you know, Experiences I'll always remember, and so having those experiences is truly why I love film. The last experience I had, which was more of a recent experience that I had that was also just so powerful. I went. It was probably about 3 years ago now. I went to my first IMAX screening, and I saw the last Quentin Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I saw it in IMAX. And I had never experienced IMAX theater. The closest IMAX theater for us, or for me here in Maine, is in Saco, Maine, which is quite a ways away. It's over 2 hours. But I went there. I took a little personal kind of vacation. I got a hotel down in South Portland at that time, and just had a little personal getaway, and it was amazing. I mean, it was unlike anything I had experienced before. And this movie today, Daniel Day Lewis, a film directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, and that is this masterpiece here. There Will Be Blood. I got to see this in the theater. I saw this movie when it came out, opening weekend, with my good friend Sean Russell, who actually was a guest on this show. I He lives in New York now. He's lived in New York City with his wife for probably over 10 years or so. And There Will Be Blood has been out for a long time, which is just crazy. It came out in 2007, which is nuts. But I remember when I met Sean, he lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I met him at college. He was an old college friend. And after school, and then even on break, we kept in touch. And I used to go down to Portsmouth and stay at his house on weekends, and we would hang out and listen to music, go to concerts, go to movies, and all those kinds of things, and always had fun. And one of the movies that we saw was There Will Be Blood, and it had just come out that weekend. Didn't know anything about it. I don't even think, again, it came out in 2007, so quite a few years ago now. I had not. I had heard about it, but I didn't know anything about the film whatsoever. And so we decided, hey, well, let's just go. Let's just go to this movie. We both love Daniel Day-Lewis as an actor. He's one of the greatest actors of his generation. Paul Thomas Anderson, loved some of his films. And we went to this really amazing theater in Portsmouth. I can't remember the name of the theater, but it was huge, one of those multi seated theaters. I mean, it was just massive. One of the biggest theaters I've ever been into. I mean, it probably held, 800, maybe even 900 people. It was a massive theater. It wasn't IMAX, but it was close to it, and it was massive. It had the stadium seating. It was the first time I had ever gone to a movie where it was full on stadium seating, and it had so you could sit up. You'd sit at this certain level or at this angle, and no one would be in your way, and it was jaw dropping. I remember when we saw that movie, and I remember after we saw it, we walked out in the parking lot, and we were just like speechless. just blown away by how powerful this movie was, and just the experience of seeing a movie at that was shot and put together so well, and it was just such a powerful movie. But to see it on this, uh, in this theater, that was just like it was truly a magical experience. I was just completely blown away by it. Um, and and since then, I only have this movie on DVD. I need to buy this on Blu-ray. But and since then, I've seen this movie a bajillion times, and this movie is, I think, such a masterpiece. It's such a dark movie. It's such a twisted movie. Um, Daniel Day Lewis stars as this. Well, he's kind of a psychopath, but he basically he becomes. It's kind of a rags to riches kind of a story, but it's basically about Daniel Day Lewis's character who ends up becoming this oil tycoon, who becomes his net worth, he becomes a millionaire, and he becomes this massively powerful figure, and it's all about the wealth that he accumulates, and then also how no one or nothing will get in his way, and he is fully protective of who and what he owns, and is completely hell bent on creating a mark and leaving a mark. This movie also starred Paul Dano, and it was the first time I'd ever seen Paul Dano before, and he is easily one of the greatest actors around. He is one of the greatest actors in his generation right now. The last movie he was in, which again was just amazing, was he was the Riddler in Robert Pattinson's or Matt Reeves' The Batman, which starred Robert Pattinson as Batman. Paul Dano played the Riddler, and amazing, terrifying, completely terrifying. And Paul Dano has emerged as one of the most incredible actors around. Uh, his track record of films and his ability to reinvent himself in each film is is a thing of legend, I think. And considering he's still a very young actor, but he plays this priest or this preacher in this film, and this film really does tackle a lot of religious themes and overtones. It There Will Be Blood tackles lots of things about capitalism, crony capitalism, morality, how the the ambiguous nature of when a person kind of creates their own hierarchy of values, their own and creating their own world in their own through their own vision. And also, with great power, there can be a great sense of loss. Uh, just an amazing film. Paul Thomas Anderson, of course, you know, has a really great track record as a director. I mean, he's made some incredible movies. I've seen just about all of his films. I've always been a big fan of his work. Um, he did his last movie, which I actually haven't seen, Licorice Pizza, which came out in 2021. I still haven't seen that movie for some reason. I do want to see it at some point. There Will Be Blood came out in 2007. It's hard to believe. Magnolia, which was another movie he did in 1999, which is a pretty cool movie. Another movie of his that I just think is such an amazing movie. One of the best, if not arguably, if not the best movie he's ever done. Boogie Nights, which came out in 1997, starring Mark Wahlberg, and it's essentially about this actor who is in the porn industry. But what a movie! Just unbelievable, just an incredible movie. Phantom Thread, which is another movie he did, which was one of his last films that he did. Daniel Day-Lewis has done it a couple of times, but it seems like now he has like retired from being an actor, and he did this movie in 2017, Phantom Thread, which is actually a really, really great movie. It's really kind of a disturbing movie. It's a very subtle movie. It's kind of about obsession and manipulation, um, and it's such a heavy duty character study, but really great movie. Beautifully, beautifully shot. That came out in 2007. He also did this other movie, which is totally bonkers crazy, called The Master, which came out in 2012, starring Philip Seymour Hoffman. And that movie is basically kind of centered, or it's basically a story about L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. And Philip Seymour Hoffman plays essentially L. Ron Hubbard. And the movie is completely insane and just weird. And Joaquin Phoenix is also in it. It's such a bizarre movie, but great and pretty disturbing movie. Most of Paul Thomas Anderson's films are very dark and pretty twisted. Punch Drunk Love, speaking of pretty twisted and pretty dark, uh, which came out in 2002, starring Adam Sandler. Totally weird, totally bizarro, very dark. That was, I'm not a huge Adam Sandler fan. I think he's made maybe a couple of good comedies, but he's an iconic figure in Hollywood. Most notably for being on SNL for many years. But when I saw Punch Drunk Love for the first time, I was like, wow. I was kind of blown away because he plays a really straight character, not a comedy in any way, shape, or form, and it's plays a very dark character, but really great movie. Highly, highly bizarre, highly strange. Um, he did another film which is not so great. I've seen it. I didn't really like it that much. Inherent Vice, which I believe Joaquin Phoenix was in it. Not a really great movie, but again, overall, Paul Thomas Anderson is definitely a force, and he has made some incredible movies. Has a real diverse collection of movies that he's done. I kind of think my favorite. It's a toss up. I think the two greatest films he's ever done, I think, are Boogie Nights. Like that movie is just a masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. And There Will Be Blood. I also feel like that's a masterpiece. So it's like a close. Those two movies are kind of tied for first for me. They're just incredible movies, just so high level. The other thing that I loved about this film, which was such a cool um, surprise, was that this film was actually the music was composed by Johnny Greenwood, who is the lead guitar player for Radiohead. He composed all of the music for this film. He also did all the music for Phantom Thread, which was uh, the last film that Dano Day-Lewis did. The film score for this movie is super minimalist, but it's so cool, and I love the music for this. It's so ominous and haunting. It's very dark, but just very powerful, very evocative. I actually have the soundtrack for this. I'm a huge Radiohead fan and Johnny Greenwood fan and Tom York fan, so very excited, and I was really, um, you know, kind of blown away that he also, as a musician and artist, was venturing into composing for film, and really great. And the music he also did for Phantom Thread is pretty spectacular. It's way different, totally different vibe. It's still got an edge to it, but it's more, I don't know, it has a little bit more of a orchestral kind of vibe to it. But awesome, awesome movie as well. But There Will Be Blood, masterpiece of a movie. If you have not seen this, I highly recommend it. Came out 2007, quite a few years ago. I need to get an upgrade of this at some point on Blu-ray. I have this DVD copy, which is actually good, a really good copy. It doesn't have any special features. I have looked this up, and I have seen it in stores because I know this is available on Blu-ray and 4K. I haven't come across any copies of this film where there is any collection or a collection of special features, because I'm all about that. But regardless of that, or that being said, this film is, or at least this copy or this edition is really, really great. But getting an upgrade would be incredible because this movie is all about that total immersion, like I said. But amazing movie. Highly, highly recommend this if you've never seen this movie. It's probably, I love Daniel Day Lewis. He's been in so many great films over the years. You know, one of the greatest actors ever. I think that this is his best role ever. So, this is Jason Dean. So, thanks again for your support, and we will see you next time. Peace.